Thank you, everybody. So here we go. Sustainable open source software development, whatever that means. First, I have to say that today it is a very special moment for me to be here, to see you all. I see a lot of old friends in the audience, and I hope I'm going to have a few new friends before the conference is over. I haven't been present much in the past few years. This is actually the very first time I speak in Bulgaria since 2019. I wonder why. And I was told before the conference that somebody, a close friend of mine, was circulating the rumor that this is the very last talk I'll ever do. So I better do it well. You might have noticed that my profile picture everywhere on social media is from the last conference in Bulgaria, so I really need good profile pictures. Yeah, this is from HackConf. So, what has happened in those 5 years? You know, one thing you know, but there are many things that you might not know. Let's start with the good stuff. Ruby 3 finally real. I long traveled around the world and claimed this would never be real, so I guess I was wrong. Some even more improbable things have happened, like Manchester City surprisingly won the Champions League, Argentina won the World Cup, didn't see this coming, Napoli won Serie A without Don Diego, and here it gets really crazy. Also, this is the man who has been charged to save Bulgarian football, so I don't know. In Bulgaria, impossible is truly nothing, but still. On the other hand, a lot of things are more or less the same, like my name and my handle on most of social media, but Elon Musk made it a little bit more interesting this time around because he forced me to embrace some new things. I do have different handles here and there. I'm not sure if this is the right logo, looking at it, but it's a Mastodon logo for sure. Absolutely, I am older today, allegedly wiser, but not really. If I were wiser, would I inflict 4 hours of this shit upon myself? It gets worse. I recently decided to reread The Wheel of Time. It's just as bad as I remembered it to be. And it has been taking me about 2 years to get somewhere here. It's very hard. It's good that Dune is solid. 3 times later, third time is a charm, finally a good Dune movie. And the books are still worth rereading. Anyways. Shit, do I have something about programming in this talk? This is important. My talk, as my retirement talk, was supposed to be really good, but I discovered Fallout, and I didn't work on the presentation at all. I can tell you that Fallout is really great, though. Also, another thing that has changed, no, that's not Nick. I used to be able to drink like Nick, but now, older, not wiser, I drink only wine because I'm a weak man, but I drink only German wine, so Nick approves. Other things that have changed, this part is especially dedicated to my friend Xavier because absolutely nobody in the right mind is going to appreciate it. We share a passion with him, a passion for mechanical watches. This is how my Instagram looks right now. Oh yeah, obviously I like O's, I like watches. I'm not sure what this guy is. So somebody should tell me after my presentation. But I'm the kind of weirdo who watches Apocalypse Now and says, Martin Sheen is wearing a lovely Seiko 6105. And Marlon Brando is wearing a Rolex GMT Master. So the filmmakers really knew something about watches because you can see the tension, the competition, Japan against the old world. Good stuff. This is actually the watch that I'm wearing right now, the watch from Apocalypse Now. And I realized one thing. Seiko is made in Japan. Ruby is made. If you have a Seiko watch on your left arm, this makes you 30% better Ruby programmer. If you have Casio, 40%. If you have Citizen, it has no effect even though it's made in Japan. If you are Nick and you believe only in Herste Stelle, Deutschland, something, this is the only word in German that I know other than Prost. And Nick approves. But yeah, there is something about programming here as well. I'm still doing a lot of open source work, even though this slide hasn't been updated since October 2013. So I'm not updating it because I know it is going to look a lot worse right now. Oh, I've done some things in the Ruby community that you hate. I will mention that RuboCop, since very recently, supports the new super modern, super fast Prism parser. In other words, it's even faster. And it had a small birthday on the 21st of April. I think that for open source projects, years have to be multiplied by 10 or 20, so it's like a 120-year-old person. And this means something. We achieved some small milestones here and there. I noticed that RuboCop is the 68th most downloaded gem in the history of Ruby. And I noticed some funny things that some of the other gems here, Ruby Progress Bar, AST, Rainbow, are dependencies of RuboCop. So when you become a dependency of RuboCop, you immediately get 400 million downloads for free, which is nice. As our MC alluded in the beginning, I have done some other open source work as well, mostly in the Clojure community with the Cider IDE. Are there any Clojure developers here? One. That's underwhelming. Anyways, some boring stuff. Emacs. Are there any Emacs users here? I should just leave the stage. But I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying this because I feel I'm kind of qualified to speak on the subject of today's presentation, namely sustainable open source development. I know what you're wondering right now. Sustainable open source development. I thought that this is something fun, right? You have some free time, you go create a project. Well, I think it's not as simple as this. First of all, I think that there are, broadly speaking, two types of open source projects. Number one, enterprise open source. You all know it. Hopefully you hate it just as much as RuboCop, except my precious. Enterprise always seems like such an exciting term, something that maybe came out from Star Wars, was it? But in reality, the main thing that enterprise software has going for it, it's sustainable, out of the box. And this makes it boring. So we are going to talk today more about the other category, hobby or hacker open source. I call it HOS because I want to invent new abbreviations. Some people call it TrueOS or TOS. I think that HOS is better. Gennady calls it CoolOS or COS. I wonder why. You know, COS is fun in every sense of the word. This is the type of project that you start and you keep going for a reason that you're not completely aware of. I'm going to tell you the story of COS open source developer, Nick Sutterer. So he had a problem that he was passionate about. You tell me what? Nick, do you have any ideas? No. Okay. He didn't have any plans for world domination, even though Germans typically have plans. Others found his brilliant work. They felt it was useful. It was improving upon the out-of-the-box Ruby on Rails experience. Nick achieved world fame, whatever this means. And now Nick was kind of sad because he had to do work that he never envisioned or wanted to do. He had to go to many conferences, meet people, and Nick doesn't like people. He also doesn't like drinks. But most importantly, he doesn't like working on tasks that he doesn't care about, like many of the feature requests that he receives for Trailblazer. And at some point, his hobby project became similar to his usual work without the pay. As you can see, Nick is miserable. Nick is feeling the pressure of countless responsibilities. When he started with open source, he felt that all he was going to do is write beautiful code. But no, the responsibilities of the open source maintainers stretch far and wide, way beyond writing the code. Here are a few examples. You do get to write some code, but you have to review a lot more if you happen to be the maintainer of a successful project. Everything that I'm saying today is actually in the context of successful projects, because if you don't have users, you don't have problems. So you're lucky, your projects are sustainable. But with success, success begets problems. It's as simple as this. Don't become successful like Eva. So you also have to write documentation, because now you have users and they demand to know how your project works. You have to do project management because people want to know what is the 5-year roadmap, the petiletka, as we say in Bulgaria, the 10-year roadmap. How are we going to crush the competition with more and more useless features and improved performance that nobody needs, actually. You also have to provide them with world-class support for free over numerous support channels. They want all of their chat platforms to be supported, plus GitHub, plus a mailing list, maybe paper mail for the more demanding Zoom calls, whatever calls. You're a nice person, you do it. You also have to do some community activities, promote a little bit what's happening, maybe engage in friendly wars with adjacent project in your endless drive for world domination. You have to explain how their projects suck and yours is better, and this is the one true solution. But in reality, this applies only to Emacs. Everything else is bullshit. And you also have to deal with a lot of unhappy users and random attacks, something that everybody who has been in the open source community for a while understands. I have experienced a few of those, and the Ruby community is more vicious than general. There used to be this fun website, rubydramas.com, with a countdown, 5 days since the last Ruby drama, 10 days. I think they shut it down just because it was so depressing. I can share a lot of stories about the weird things I have experienced. Like I remember that once I was accused that I was endorsing totalitarian regimes because I named my project RuboCop after RoboCop. Okay, this was interesting. I have to tell you that nothing has been more demotivating in my open source work than the countless dramas. Every time somebody creates a storm in a teacup or in a bottle or in something else, I tell myself, fuck this shit, I am done. Because there is almost only so much pain that a sane person can endure for something that is essentially meaningless, like software. So, can we make this better? Can we make this more sustainable? Some ideas. Let's start with the most obvious. In recent years, there was a proliferation of all sorts of funding platforms. You all know them. They have some differences, but when you reduce it to the fundamentals, the core idea is the same. Print money out of thin air. Or, as it is called more commonly, donations. So you sign up for every donation platform and you receive a lot of donations, you quit your job, and you're a full-time cost developer. Fantastic. But has this happened to many people? I don't think so. I know a lot of people in many communities, and I know less than 3 people who managed to make this work in this way, and they all had to make some significant sacrifices in their lives. So, okay. I think it's safe to say that donations are not a viable business model. You know what's bad? Even tipping in restaurants and bars, I mean, is a more viable business model than donations because we have this social contract with tipping. You go to a restaurant, you're happy with the service, you leave a tip. You go to a bar, you're happy with the service, you leave a tip. But you work with something non-stop, you're happy, are you going to leave a tip? No, because that's not what society expects. Society has decided that if it has free in the name, it's free. Also, donations are very vulnerable to economic cycles. This is how the donations for all of my projects have been looking in the last 3 years. Irina mentioned that her company hasn't done layoffs. That's fantastic. A lot of companies did layoffs, and they also cut whatever budget they allocated for open source. They laid off a lot of people, so they stopped supporting open source. And on average, across platforms and projects, all of my projects are down -30 to -50% in terms of donations. If this was my life's livelihood, I'd be having a very tough time right now. Do you know what's the email I'm getting most often these days? Yeah, it's okay. Luckily for me, I have a real job and I don't need the money. Everything that I do in open source, I do it because I enjoy it. But this shows how unsustainable the entire community is. And some people really get into tough situations. A key contributor of Cider went out of job last year, and I made the hard decision to allocate all of the money that the project has raised throughout its history, around 80,000 euros, to support the work of this person in his hard time because he had to support a family. He was very knowledgeable, so he got a lot of shit done, but he has made more money out of my project than me, which is always kind of funny. So, okay. Relying on donations doesn't work. What else can we do? Next stop, focused crowdfunding campaigns. I'll give you an example. I say that if you give me 20,000 euros, in 2 months, I'm going to make RuboCop 5 times faster. Maybe I can pull this off once, but can I pull it off 2 times, 3 times? Is it going to be sustainable? I can tell you it won't be sustainable. And I can give you examples outside of the realm of programming. Remember how much money went to donations for Ukraine 2 years ago? Compare it to the donations that they're receiving today, and the war is just as bad. People cannot commit in this way. It sucks. It's human nature. Okay, let's try something else. Let's apply for funding at a community foundation. In the Ruby community, we have Ruby's Together. In the Clojure community, we have Clojure is Together. Well, unless you have a huge project in the Ruby community, you're not getting funding. And even RuboCop is not considered important enough to get funding. In the Clojure community, maybe you can be more successful, but the sad reality is, unless the community is going to crumble without your project, you're likely not seeing any money. Let's try something else. Dual licensing. This is the holy grail. I'll make it open source and enterprise at the same time. I'm going to charge for feature support, something along those lines. I shoot for the moon or beyond the moon. But I can think of only 2 projects in the Ruby community that did something like this, and they didn't transition to this model. They started with this model. Why is this the case? Because the OS community is brutal. It really is. Every time a project or a maintainer starts to try to monetize it in one way, they're immediately accused of everything bad that you can imagine in the world. Literally, people are running after them with torches and pitchforks. And end of story. I don't want to deal with this shit, so I'd rather stay unsustainable. I think that the key to sustainability is somewhere else. First, you have to adopt the ethos, keep calm, and don't give a, I'm not sure if I can say it, but I said fuck so many times, so don't give a fuck about the haters, because they don't deserve it. We continue. Another dream scenario. You get hired by a big user of your project, maybe some corporation. We've seen it a few times with key members of the Ruby community who got hired by companies like GitHub, Red Hat, etc. But all of them were super famous. All of them in total were like 20 people. And I think that the community is a lot bigger. So the chances of something like this happening are slim to none. Okay, let's try something else. Maybe we don't need money at all. Maybe the key to happiness is in the mindset. I think one of the most important things is to become a worse person. You have to say no when you start receiving requests that are going to create a significant maintenance overhead that you don't care at all about. Because one of the most demotivating things for me is that over the course of time, a lot of the features in my bigger projects are some things that I never needed, I never used, but I have to keep fixing and explaining to other people and providing support for them. And this is really, really demotivating, as I said. This is the reason why RuboCop has 342 open issues, because I don't care about them. Like, they are not a problem for me, they're a problem for somebody else. I'm not getting paid to fix them, and unless somebody wants to fix them, they're not going to be fixed. I have realized that for me not to lose my mind, my passion, I have to keep it simple. I have to focus on the things that I am passionate about and not the users are passionate about. If they want to come and do something and tell me that they're going to maintain it forever and ever and ever, I will consider it. But when you ask them about the forever and ever, usually they run away. So I want to keep the magic alive by sticking to the things that I value, that I cherish. I also have realized that it is important to decrease the buzz factor for every project, so not everything relies upon me, and I shouldn't be paged constantly for random critical problems. So it is important, if you happen to be the steward of a bigger project, to find other maintainers. It cannot be just you. In RuboCop, I've achieved to big extent with the Closure and the Emacs project to a lesser extent, but the good thing is that if today the tram hits me outside of this building, RuboCop is going to continue. Probably it wouldn't be as fun, but it will get the job done. And also having a lot of maintainers and a bigger community around the project helps to avoid issues like the infamous XZ fiasco, where a lot has been said about what happened, but fundamentally the problem was that an overworked maintainer needed help, some malicious person volunteered to help and fucked up the project. I don't blame the maintainer of XZ, I blame the entire community around the project that let it get to this tipping point, breaking point, call it whatever. Cost sucks, even though it's cool. So, my recipe for success and sustainability is very simple. Open source software is sustainable when it is fun or funded, ideally fun and funded. F and F. Yes. When I was working on this talk, I constantly got flashbacks from one rant, a very infamous rant. Open source is not about you, that the author of Closure, Rich Hickey, created 7-8 years ago. I don't remember it. But he said a lot of interesting things that I didn't agree fully with at the time, but now it's like something I would have written myself. I'll turn around so I can read better. No, I'll read from here. I never put so much text on a slide, so it must be good. The only people entitled to say how open source ought to work are the people who run the projects, and the scope of their entitlement extends only to their own projects. Deep and profound. Just because someone open sources something does not imply they owe the world a change in their status, focus, and effort. For example, from inventor to community manager. Very well put. As a user of something open source, you are not thereby entitled to anything at all. Kind of controversial, but very, very true. You are not entitled to contribute. You are not entitled to features. You are not entitled to the attention of others. You are not entitled to having value attached to your complaints. You are not entitled to this explanation. Deep and profound. I'm not going to read this, but I'll mention the beginning. Open source, at the end of the day, is just a delivery mechanism. Some people try to portray this as some philosophy of life with some cult-like status, but it's not. There is very little difference between open source in the traditional sense, this one, and the enterprise fake open source projects. Like, okay, Eclipse is open source, but how easy is to contribute there? The Eclipse Foundation doesn't care about you. IBM don't care about you. And you're okay. You're using Eclipse and you're probably not complaining much because you understand this contract. But when we say that something is community force, a lot of people feel very, very entitled and they expect very unreasonable things without contributing almost nothing except countless complaints. So this talk I dedicate to the deepest and most profound open source maintainer that I've met. Nick, this is for you. And this is the end. It was my honor to be here.